Hi, as promised, another video for those of you who did not make class. Today was a altered Friday time, correct? On Fridays we work at or meet at a slightly different time. So for those of you who did not quite get it together for the 9:15 meet, I'm going to do a brief overview of the material that I went over in class. Now, today we are talking about the legislative branch because that is what your next pod is on. So since you're viewing this, I don't need to show you how to use Jupyter Ed in order to find the YouTube. Clearly, you know how to get here, right? So when we talk about Congress, right, a legislative branch is Congress at the federal level, and it is a bicameral legislature. You know, bi clearly means two, right? Bicycle, two wheels. Bisexual, attracted to two sexes, male and female. So bicameral is a legislature with two parts, two houses. In the Senate, we have the upper house, and that is the more prestigious, more powerful position, and then the House of Representatives, which is the lower house. Now, this two-party system, or this two-house system, it was created as a compromise between the highly populated states who wanted the House and the smaller states that wanted, more of the Senate. So the House of Representatives is based off of population. Representation is based off of population, and that population is determined by, you got it, the thing we've been talking about all week, the census. So that is an incredibly, incredibly important thing to make sure you please fill out. And we will be returning to the idea of the census because it's in the news again today. So the more populous states wanted that representation based on population because that would give them more power and more voice and more say. The smaller states were worried that they would always kind of be overpowered by those more popular states, populous states. And the smaller states wanted an equal representation. And that's where the Senate comes from. So the Senate has 2 senators for every state, not Washington, D.C., and not territories, okay, but for actual states, full-on states. And it's very important that the House and the Senate also kind of act as an internal check on one another. We talked about checks and balances the other day, and this is an internal check. So if the House of Representatives wants to pass a massive spending bill, let's say in maybe June of this year, May or June, giving additional money to households for the pandemic, having money go to the states to help pay for medical care and cleaning of public transportation, and for schools reopening during a pandemic, and want to extend the federal supplement for unemployment, right? If the Senate doesn't want to pass that bill, which they didn't, then that's a check. Okay, that is an internal check on one another. So that term of service, how long each representative serves, House of Representatives 2 years, Senate 6 years, that is going to have an impact in how closely tied those representatives are to their constituents, to the people that they represent. So the House of Representatives only serves 2 years. Within those 2 years, if you're a House of Representative individual really just ticks you off, you feel it does not represent you, does not represent your community, or is using their position inappropriately, or you don't like what they're doing, it's a very simple matter. 2 years down the road, that's a quick fix. You vote for somebody else. And the House of Representatives, they really only represent small parts of the state. With the Senate, it's a little different, right? So the senators serve staggered 6-year terms. They serve 6-year terms. So the responsibility of the Senate is to represent the entire state. So that longer piece of time gives them more power, it gives them more influence. But it also gives them more responsibility because the Senate has to do additional things. The Senate has to balance the needs of different parts of the state, right? Farming areas upstate are going to have different needs here in New York than the needs of Wall Street. And the needs of Wall Street are going to be different than the needs of the people, the working people who live, you know, in my neighborhood, uptown, or, you know, here in the Bronx, right? So the Senate has some very influential powers, and we're seeing some of these at play. So it's kind of cut and dried when we're looking at it here on the screen as part of notes, and this is how government works. But in reality, this is a very messy, messy thing to implement government. Okay, so what can the Senate do? The Senate can consent to treaties. They can consent and confirm appointments of important federal positions, hold that thought, and hold the trial for federal officials impeached by the House. Now, we've been through impeachment proceedings, and remember, impeachment does not equal being removed from office. The House of Representatives hold the actual impeachment hearings. They listen to evidence and they decide, the House decides, is there enough evidence here to charge the official, you know, with not a crime exactly, but with violating some very serious rules. The Senate is where the actual trial for those charges are held. So the House can impeach somebody, but if that person who is impeached is found not guilty, they keep their position. So let's go back to this consent and confirm. Last week, there was a devastating loss to America. And we lost a Supreme Court justice by the name of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She was a very active feminist. She fought for equality for women in society. When she finished her law school, she could not get hired by any firm in New York City simply on the basis of they didn't want to hire a woman. And she really kind of fought against that sort of society in which women weren't treated as equals. It was not so long ago that if a woman wanted to have a credit card, her husband had to sign the application. So, you know, she fought a long time against discrimination, particularly against women, but, you know, upholding rights for many minority groups. With her death, that leaves an open Supreme Court seat. And the Supreme Court, even though it seems very distant, has a very real impact on your day-to-day lives. They decide cases having to do with immigration policy. They decide cases having to do with who wins presidential elections. They decide cases that have to do with access to medical care. Right? These are things that impact your day-to-day lives. And this is a really important, you know, event to take place, especially since there is an election in just a matter of weeks. Now, you know, 4 years ago, we had another Supreme Court justice that passed away, Justice Scalia. And it was about 8 months before the election. And at that time, you know, the Republican Party did not allow the nomination of Merrick Garland, the nominee at the time from President Obama, to leave, you know, the committee. And because of that, a full vote couldn't be taken. So the Senate couldn't take a vote because it got stuck in committee. And the Republicans cited the fact that there is an upcoming election, and they didn't believe it was okay for a sitting president to replace a candidate, a Supreme Court justice, in an election year. Fast forward to today, and it seems President Trump will make his nomination. It's guessed for tomorrow, for Saturday. And the Republican-controlled Senate seems to be just fine now, pushing forward with replacing the seat. That is the power that is given to the Senate, right? Replacing this. So whether you agree with what they did before and what they're doing now is immaterial to understanding that the way in which this process works is that the executive branch can nominate a replacement, but that check and balance that's held by the Senate is that first that nominee has to go before the committee the Senate committee has to vote whether or not to allow the Senate to hold a vote on the nominee. And then the Senate can go ahead and hold that vote if the person clears the committee. Okay. That is part of procedural due process. Those are part of the steps that we have in place in order to have checks and balances within our system. So that's why I'm saying it's a very simple thing to just sit back and say, okay, so the Senate can confirm federal positions. In reality, the way in which it works out is often very fraught with controversy and is a very, very messy process. Okay, so I'm going to let you guys go ahead and do the pod at this point. You don't need me to read to you that you have to be a certain age to be a House rep, and then you have to be a certain age. You guys are capable of doing that yourself. So please make sure that you're taking notes when you are doing these Jupiter pods and writing down the notes portion. And please be sure to answer the questions thoroughly. There aren't a lot of them in this one, so please make sure you're explaining your thought process and how you came to your answers. Okay, if you have any questions, you know where to find me. Shoot me a message. Enjoy your weekend, and don't forget, we do not have school this Monday, which is September. Hold on 1 second. I am looking at a calendar. That is September 28th. September 28th, 2020. We do not have class. Enjoy your long weekend, everybody. Be safe. Wear your masks.